A state select committee is studying the alignment of congressional districts in Maryland. There has been much outcry since the last redistricting about the way the state was drawn and quartered. Jim, can you explain how the districts are decided upon?
Well, I'd like to be able to explain how these districts were decided upon, but it passes human understanding, in my opinion. So what happened was what happens is that based on the census, the congressional districts are redistributed to even out the populations among the various districts.
We have a requirement to do that at least every 10 years.
Yes, we do. That is in the Constitution. We need to do
2020 will be the next.
2020 will be the next one. It'll probably happen in 2022 when they actually get the districts introduced. That being said, what happened this past term is that we had a Democratic governor, and lo and behold, he wanted to make the districts as democratically friendly as possible. And that is exactly what he did. And if you look at the map, you'll notice that some of the districts, some of them are not even contiguous. Some of them are just meander. They just don't make sense.
Now, to be fair, though, gerrymandering goes back to 1810 when we didn't have Democrats or Republicans. So any party in power in any given state, with very few exceptions, is going to engage in their own form of gerrymandering to try to get their districts where they have the greatest number of population who favor their particular point of view to vote. So what they do, of course, is they take, if you're in a Democratic state, you'll try to redistrict so that you have fewer Republicans who can pull together to form a vote, so you don't have a majority of Republicans in any given area.
So does that make
at least that's the goal?
Does that make it right?
And no, it doesn't. Okay. And in Republican states, they do it the same. They just do it opposite of that.
Right. Well, and the real issue, I
doesn't
think,
make it right at all,
is that constitutionally, and whether it's at the state level or federally, we don't really have a system for how to divide population areas into voting districts.
No, it's a state function.
And that's where we go wrong, because we don't have any formula for doing this. So this allows a lot of abuse to occur. So, you know, during the break we were joking about it. Sometimes you look at these districts and it looks like somebody picked a drunk and let him meander around a state, talking to people.
That's actually the way the term gerrymander came about, because you had a governor of Massachusetts who actually did it the first time in 1810. His name was Jerry. His last name was Jerry. And some cartoonist made a crack that the districts he drew looked like a salamander. So gerrymandering, and that's exactly where that term came from, was from political cartoons of the time.
Well, you know, it's there is a, you know, the governor appoints a committee, a 5-person committee, and it's funny how our last Democratic governor, to the people in the committee, of course, were the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House.
Sure.
So you know what's going to happen, you know. But it's, you know, 73% of Marylanders prefer a system where legislative and congressional districts are set up by an independent commission.
And that's the only way it's going to stop.
And I think that's, and you're right, and that's fair and equitable. I mean, that's all you can ask for.
Now here's a problem on a national level. Let's say you get a few states, and there are 3 or 4 states that do that right now. You get a few states who do that. So you get congressional districts which are drawn in a fair manner, properly represent the people. Okay. Now you have a large number of other states that haven't done that yet. So if you have those few states that have done it are fair, predominantly Democratic or predominantly Republican, then that gives them a disadvantage when it comes to the House of Representatives, because you have all these other states that haven't done it yet because it's not a federal requirement.
And I think, to me, and you're bringing up a very good point, and it should be a state function on how districts are drawn, because ultimately it's a state-related issue. However, the federal government certainly issues directives or basically guidelines for a number of things, for voting fairness, for anti-discrimination, for all these other things. And I think if the federal government were to put in place a regulation, or whatever you want to call it, that you would have to have an independent commission that actually determines.
Well, it has gone to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has interacted only insofar as gerrymandering cannot violate civil rights.
Right.
Now, Republican, Democrat doesn't make any difference, but there were attempts back in the 60s to gerrymander to violate people. That's right. And that was struck down by the Supreme Court, but they have absolutely refused to strike down any other forms of gerrymandering.
And so far, I've got a bunch of court cases here where your point's exactly right. But wouldn't it be wonderful if our POTUS, before he left office, used this, and then actually did something about gerrymandering?
Well, that certainly would be beneficial, I think.
I mean, the
Because
last
the
of us-
reality is, it hurts them as much as it hurts.
Well, it hurts
both
everybody.
sides.
It hurts everybody,
disenfranchises voters, which is just fundamentally wrong. So
Right.
the reality of the matter is there should be an independent commission that picks these things, and they should have some sort of geographic basis. You have these districts that are just, they look like somebody just threw paint at a map. And of course, they're following boundaries of particular regions that represent one voting group or another.
That's right.
And that's just wrong.
And this all comes back to the two-party system.
Yes.
Which our founding fathers warned us against.
Yeah, exactly, and which I have spoken out against since my first term as mayor in 1997. I mean, it's just, it restricts people's ability, especially in primaries, to vote for the best person.
Yes, absolutely. I could not agree with you
I think
more.
that is the worst thing, which is why I'm glad the city of Hagerstown, before I left office, we passed in our charter to go to a nonpartisan election.
Yes.
So that anybody who is a registered voter can vote in both the primary and the general election.
Which
And I think
makes
that's
a
the
lot
way
of
it's supposed to
sense.
work. I mean,
Which makes a lot of sense.
yeah, sure it does.
Well, I think, if you look at what's going on in generally, especially at the federal level, the two-party system is probably one of the biggest ails that we have currently.
it's-
And that's why nothing gets done, because candidates are...
No, because we've had a two-party system for centuries, and things used to get done. The reason they're not getting done now is because everything's become so partisan and so polarized. 20 years ago, it wasn't that bad.
No,
we
and
can
you're-
still get things done.
And
what
why
has,
has
what
it
has
become
happened
partisan,
is what has
polarized?
happened is that Democrats have voided themselves of their conservative portion. Republicans have voided themselves of their liberal portion. So now you have two parties which are diametrically opposed, whereas 20 years ago you had liberal conservative factions in both parties.
Well, and both parties are catering to the most extreme elements.
That is the key. That is the key. They,
Yes.
Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, you name the network.
Yep.
The people they put on their air are generally from the far right or the far left.
And that's a real issue with our media, because in the United States we had a long tradition of impartial media. Whereas in England, for instance, you have media organizations that are known to be partisan for Labour or for the Conservative Party, and that's the way it works there. That's a failure that we have, I think, in our popular
agree.
media currently.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, that's why this show is so great.
Aside from the arguments that we are not having for whatever reason.
Right.
Okay, I think that's the last word. Up next, the panel discusses the recent latex spill into the Potomac River by Western Maryland Paper Mill and the effects it could have on Washington County. So stay with us.